Okay, guys, welcome to another Mamemeister and Chums Talk Pish, and I'm delighted to welcome Lewis, London Retro Video Games. Good evening. I was going to say it's all normally good evening, but for a first time ever, it's actually good morning. It's only 8 minutes past 10 in the morning. How are you, Lewis?
Yeah, good. Thanks. Morning, Alan. Nice for you to have me on the channel.
No, absolutely fantastic. I mean, you're a fairly, I say fairly new. I suppose you are fairly new to my channel. And to give a wee bit background, the only reason, and people talk about the internet as being a very cold place. You know, you need to be careful because you're going to get scammed, you're going to get ripped off. People are only looking to see what they can get out of you, and that there is a lot of truth in that, I would imagine. But I can absolutely, say that the interweb, YouTube, etc. There's a really, really nice side to it, and I think I'm very, very lucky to have a YouTube channel where probably right in thinking that where I differ from other channels is most of their channels, it's just like they just broadcast to the people, whereas I actively encourage input. Hence the reason you're on it. Hence the reason we have. I mean, when we do, like there we go. I call it we. I mean, it's just me talking, but the Sunday live stream that we do, it's a time that everybody comes together, and when I'm sitting watching a little intro bit, I can see everybody morning or evening, how you doing, and it's a really, really good community. And the reason that you and I got to know each other wasn't through YouTube. It was because I sold you some knockoff, some old console.
Yeah, it was the Mega Drive game.
So, yeah, it was.
So basically, that happened when I went on parental leave with my daughter, and so I was at home with she was between 9 and 12 months old, and I had a lot more time on my hands because I wasn't working, and I'd sold my old N64 and was looking to sell my Mega Drive, and I was like, actually, I really like the Mega Drive, and started buying and selling things, and really buying things to kind of play while I had them, and then move them on when I'd kind of experienced them. Kind of before I'd, more recently, I've got much more heavily into emulation and things like that. In part from watching some of your videos, I was watching your videos, and that really getting into arcade games and things like that, and so being being introduced to your channel was like, okay, cool, a chance to see the arcade. I was mostly watching the Arcade Perfect My Asses, and seeing the arcade games, and then seeing the home versions, and for me, it's almost amusing to see some of the conversions, right? Because some of them are properly bad, right? And so kind of got kind of hooked on some of your stuff then, and I think you've built more of a community since then, doing more live streams, and we've got the Discord now, and I think it's a nice group of folks, and a enjoyable to be a part of.
Yeah. I mean, I first kind of got into when the internet became a thing back in 1997. It was well, I think there was was it online chat, whatever it was called. I can't remember exactly. Was it IRC or something, whatever it's called?
Yeah, things like MSN Messenger and stuff like that.
I mean, you needed a bit of kind of technical wizardry to get into that, so that kind of excluded me. But I got into it was all forums, basically. Somebody typed, basically it's kind of similar to Discord, and that was how we kind of communicated. And then obviously over the period of time, we've now got things like YouTube. And and having Discord, that allows, I mean, YouTube it's limited in its two-way interaction, because all you've got is the person behind the camera, and then you've got somebody typing a comment, and you can reply to that. But I think, I mean, as I say, I've actively encouraged, and I'm one of these people when you'll probably know yourself, Lewis, when the Sunday stream starts, I always like to see who's in the channel, and I'll say, oh, it's London Retro, I'll call you Lewis, and a few people have said to me, you maybe want to stop doing that. And I thought, why? And he says, well, you're possibly excluding other people. Somebody that maybe comes along as a sort of a newcomer, and they maybe jump into it, and they hear me saying, oh, Lewis and Colin and Dale, and then they'll think, oh, this is a group of friends. Well, that's true. It is a group of friends, but I didn't know any of you guys until YouTube. So it's I'm not going to change the channel that I am. And I think, and given that what we're going through at the moment with the whole COVID-19 thing, like most people, we're not getting out. We're leading a very, very limited sort of life. And to me, YouTube has been a savior for me. It really has, because when other people are like bored and just they're not communicating with people, I'm going online on a Sunday night and there's like 20, 30 people and we're just having a laugh.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, some of that I think is like personality types, right? The ones that are, maybe a little bit more outgoing, you're more willing to throw a comment in, find out about the Discord, join it, contribute. And so, maybe that's caused the people who have then got involved to be that bit more outgoing, and that then creates a kind of community of people who are, willing to chat, not just, stay quiet behind their computers and just sort of consume content.
I mean, I think the big thing for me apart from, I do enjoy the creativity part. I know you'd find that hard to believe, some of the crap that I put out, but I do enjoy the building videos, and just it's an opportunity for me to talk about stuff. What was I going to say there? My mind's gone completely blank. Anyway, I can't remember. We'll move on. But yeah, listen, the sort of the something I'd like to talk about with you this morning, Lewis, is obviously if you don't mind me asking, how old are you?
I'm 34.
34, right? Okay, I'll be 53 in 4 days' time. Note that in your diaries.
Yeah, absolutely.
Amazon gift vouchers, like ready to accept cash, cold hard. I'm only joking. But there's obviously sort of 20 years of difference. So you were born, when would that be?
86.
Right. Okay. I'm glad you said that, because I work with people who were born. I'm trying to think. Certainly born after the PlayStation came out, and to me that just messes with my head big still. How could you not have been around when the PlayStation came out?
Yeah. No, so, and the other thing is, I also got into video games pretty young, which we'll come on to. So, there's it's kind of 16-bit and onwards is my thing, and for me, seeing some of your content's really interesting. It's I think you've previously described yourself as a historian in some ways of.
I think I am really, yeah. I certainly talk more than I play games these days.
Yeah, and to me that's really interesting. The history of video games is for me is almost just as interesting as the playing too. I'm not really interested in current gen. I like seeing that evolution, and but I haven't had the experience of sort of really, or much experience of sort of the 8-bits and earlier, and so here's a chance to sort of see some of that in the content that you put out. But then you're also into some of the later systems as well, although admittedly you do focus probably mostly on the 8-bit home computers, right?
Yeah. So what's your something I always like to kind of find out anytime I'm talking to somebody is what's your sort of history with video games? When did you first become aware of this thing that you could control on a TV?
Yeah, absolutely. So my first memories, I can't quite remember the exact order. So when I was young, in primary school, one of the early things was, I got a Mega Drive. I'm pretty certain it was for Christmas, and I would have been 6 or 7, I guess. So you're looking at like 92 to 93, I guess, around them.
Mm-hmm.
And console with Sonic the Hedgehog 2 and Mega Games 1, which was Columns, which we had on the high school kerfuffle.
Yeah, we're still trying to forget that one.
One of the first games I played, right? Super Hang On and World Cup Italian 90. So they had these four games on the Mega Drive. But then around that time, when I was pretty young, my dad got hold of a Vectrex.
Nice.
Yeah, and I asked him about it recently because he ended up selling it kind of before I got more into video games. If I had it now, I would not let him sell it. But I spoke to him, and he actually borrowed it off of someone, and then they basically never gave it back. So it was boxed. We had I don't know, somewhere between 6 and 10 games, and they were all boxed, had the inserts and the overlays.
Yeah.
And yeah, so I had great fun with that too, but the exact ordering of, did I get the Mega Drive first or did I play the Vectrex first? I can't exactly remember. So yeah, I had a Mega Drive from 6 or 7 through till getting an N64. That was the kind of next step, So, and because I was young, I didn't have a huge amount of exposure to many other systems, PlayStation. Sega Saturn was always like almost the dream, right? Getting magazines and seeing this amazing new Sega console come out and the evolution of graphics and things, but at the time couldn't have afforded to pick one up, and so there was that, I guess, 16-bit gaming at that
of
time.
course, the Sega Saturn came out before the PlayStation. That kind of got out just before.
Only just right, but
yeah,
it was, you're looking at like mid-90s there. So I'm getting to be on like 10 years old, something like that. I do also have some memories of, like, I guess probably not that I should have been, but being in the pub with my dad, who was a frequent pub guy, and memories of playing things like Space Invaders or the evolution of whatever Space Invaders became. So yeah, I definitely remember early exposure to arcade games there, and also again a lot of exposure to pinball. My dad absolutely loved pinball machines. And some of the ones that are still big and popular, not in terms of being sold, but that people talk about. So things like the Addams Family pinball machines, pretty popular one. Star Trek Next Generation, I think, was probably one that I can remember reasonably well too. I think both of those have kind of gone into kind of cult status on pinball. Pinball's not something I hear you talk about much, Alan. Is it something that you've ever had much interest in?
You know what? It's again, it purely comes down to lack of exposure. As I keep saying, I never where I lived, I didn't have any. There was no arcades really nearby. And it was only until the only time I got to play a video game would be when like the fair came to town, and it was the gypsies came along and they set up their stuff, and it was the real early video games, stuff like Sprint. And it's not Championship Sprint, the one you remember. It's Sprint, the black and white one by Atari. There was it was mostly Atari games. I think there was there was a basketball game that used a trackball. So that was, and I would be I would be maybe 10, 11 years old. Had no money to speak of. You maybe got 10, 20 pence to go to that. You had 20 pence in your pocket, and it was like, I play that or I play this, and then you spent an hour going round the coin eject bit, seeing if anybody you could find any money to put into the thing. So I never really got to see arcade games at all, other than we would go on the family holidays, we would go into service stations, stop for a pee, whatever, and I would maybe get 10 pence for a quick shot of Galaxian. It was only when I passed my driving test at 17, that'd be 1985, and I started college. Going to college one day a week, and there was a little arcade, so I got to know a few games. I mean, I was talking about, I can't remember what it was. It was a Chums Talk Pish or a Waffle. How we're saying how you can always remember, at least I can always remember where I first played a certain arcade game. So in the arcade at college, what would it be? R-Type, Rolling Thunder, Tekken, World Cup, Sky Kid. I always remember the music. That was one of these games that had really loud music. So again, it was very brief. And I mean, so 99% arcade games, the only time I got to actually, the only version I ever became aware of was when I got it from a Commodore 64. And then, of course, fast forward 20 years when MAME came out, that was an absolute game changer for me. And
See, arcade games, other than I mentioned, occasionally playing things and having, I guess it's probably that they're strong memories rather than playing regularly. Being in the pub with my dad was an unusual occurrence, and it was a strange environment. My grandparents lived in Brighton, and so we'd be going down there pretty often. And so there were definitely
arcades down there,
definitely arcades down there. And but the thing for me was that the games in the arcades were different to the games I was playing at home. The role of the arcades in like the mid 90s was very different to the mid to late 80s, I guess.
Yeah.
So the games I was seeing, it wasn't that, I'd go and try and find a home version of things. I almost can't remember the games that were in the arcades. I didn't, as you're saying, didn't have much money to play because I was, I guess, between 10 and 15, something like that.
You're unemployed at that point, eh?
Yeah, exactly. And it's not like my parents are particularly well off, so the arcades for such a short period of time playing was was a kind of pretty unusual experience, and also as a child not really knowing much about arcade machines, just like put the money in, and I don't know the game, and you got to work that out, and like now with picking returning some of these games with the high score kerfuffle, it takes a good few games to work out even what you're supposed to do. And so if you don't know what you're supposed to do, you put your money in, 30 seconds it's gone. It's like, that wasn't really a great experience. It probably needs that bit of investment before you can actually get a good game going, and which obviously requires a little bit, a bit of funds to achieve that. And as a child, I wasn't, it's not like I was really good at video games. I expect I'd like to think I'm better now. Maybe not.
So, see, what I've already asked the question. At what point did you become aware of video games? Did you, from a sort of an earliest memory, when you became aware of things like the TV? I suppose video recorders were still a thing back in 1985, whatever. You don't really have any self-awareness, I don't think, until you're about 5 or 6 years old.
Exactly. And it wasn't that long after that I, got a Mega Drive. So, I think that was probably one of my first exposures to video games, was just being given this console. I was like, so, what is this? Yeah. And and as you say, you can control the thing on the television. It's moving. I was playing Sonic the Hedgehog 2, which is a, very colorful, moves quickly. I remember very clearly, just trying to complete like the second level. There's the bit where like the water comes up, and you have to move quickly, otherwise you're going to drown. Those memories are extremely, extremely vivid, and that was really my first exposure.
So you didn't really, your life, you never didn't have video games. From as soon as you became self-aware as a 5 or 6 year old, you had your TV. Well, you wouldn't have had a smartphone, obviously, but you had whatever cameras, and and then video games.
Yeah, cameras still would have been like film and Polaroids and things like that. So cameras again weren't as common as they are now compared to my children growing up. They see me taking pictures, like they will pose for the camera and all that sort of stuff. That kind of wasn't a thing back then, right? And you couldn't see the picture that you've just taken straight away.
And you had I was actually explaining that to my daughter a couple of weeks ago. I says back then you only got film for your camera when you went on holiday, and if you were lucky, you'd maybe buy like a 24, or I think it was at 12, 24, and 36. I think it was, and then so you had to. There was no such thing as a selfie. Because you daren't go
you're
like
not going to waste the picture.
It'd be like the top, it'd be your ear and then nothing else. And then you also had to take it to the chemist, hand it in, wait for a week, go back, collect it, pay the £7, and then half of them were blurred and didn't turn out.
Exactly.
People, my daughter takes more pictures in a day than I took probably 10 years. You know what I mean? It's ridiculous.
Yeah, absolutely.
So obviously your first experience of video games was, Sonic 2. Now, this to kind of give a yardstick of where I see that, I still kind of look upon like the Mega Drive as a kind of a new machine, because to go back to my obviously my experiences, I was around before video games, and I'm trying to think. Well, my very first memory of a video game, an arcade game, would be seeing Space Invaders for the very, or I'll tell a lie, hearing Space Invaders for the very first time.
Yeah. So what year do you reckon that was?
It'd be, 78, 79.
Yeah.
I'd just taken up judo, and I went into the sports centre, and I said I can remember going through the rotating door, and I turned to the right, and there was this group of people huddled round what I thought looked like a wardrobe, and I didn't know what the hell it was, and it was you could hear the boom, 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 and I'm like, what's that? And then you heard the iconic, the missile, and I kind of pushed my way forward, and I'm like, what's this? And it's just I didn't know I had no idea what it was. I'd never heard of them, and so that was an absolute game changer because it was completely new, and that's why, as much as it sucks to be old, I think I'm so lucky to have been there at the very birth of the industry, because I knew what it was before it existed, and to actually see it go from Pong right through to current stuff, it's been incredible. But I look upon like the Mega Drive as quite a current machine, because it's compare it to, I mean, you've watched some of my some of my videos. Some of the stuff that we play is absolutely diabolical.
yeah,
and in fact, I've got an idea for a video. I'm going to be doing a sort of top 10 games that look shit on the Commodore 64 but are actually brilliant, because back then it wasn't about graphics, it was about gameplay. If you think about the Atari 2600, the game, absolutely. I mean, it had like 1K of memory or something ridiculous, 4K I think it was, and it was all about getting the game in there, and some of the best games. I mean, that's why I still go back and play these old games. But I think a big thing for me again was when I eventually, what age would I be? 83, 84, I think it was. About 1983, computers, the Spectrum became a thing. I mean, my first experience of computers was there was a computer shop not far from me, and again, it was when I used to go in on a Saturday morning. It was just full of like old men. I could always remember it stunk of smoke, guys with like pipes, and they were like boffins, and you go in and you would just stare at them, and it was all Ataris, and I didn't really know what these were, but I was absolutely intrigued. And then eventually I saw some of the games like Bruce Lee. To see Bruce Lee this should probably be 1979. Seeing Bruce Lee, this was amazing. This was absolutely incredible. It was like realistic graphics. So just to kind of see that, and it's to see it evolve from what it became. But so eventually my mum and dad agreed to buy my computer, and that's where it was different from you. Back in 1983, there was a magazine which I've still got called the Home Computer Course, and it had a beginner's guide to buying a computer, and it had this A4, and there must have been about 50 computers. And I pored over that magazine constantly. I would read it. It was like the Dragon 32, this powerful British computer. It's got excellent graphics. Sound is limited. The Auric has got a powerful BASIC, built-in keys. Keyboard's a bit pants. And then at the far end of the spectrum, what I wanted was this Commodore 64. I think it was like £399.
Which in today's money is a crazy amount. Right,
I mean, that was people going about
well over £1,000, right?
Yeah, exactly. So you had to make a choice. You had to decide what one do I want. I mean, I wanted the C64, but there wasn't a cat selling chance I was ever going to get that. And my mum and dad eventually bought me a Texas TI 99, which was just rubbish. Well, again, it wasn't rubbish, but I only had one game for it, which is a bit.
So was that the first sort of home system that you owned?
That was it. Apart from Binatone TV game, which was Pong. I did put out a video, a couple of years ago, trying to get this to work on a modern TV.
So I had the same experience recently. So my dad, for his birthday in 1978, he would have been 17. No, he would have been 15, I think. And I put a picture on the Discord. He got an Ajax Sportron, which was the same sort of thing as those Binatone runs, right? It's got Pong, and it's got something like 12 games on it. And we fired it up a couple of months ago. And again on a modern TV, you could barely see it. We ended, or I you had to put the brightness on max, change the contrast to as close to black and white as you could get it, and you could just about make out this kind of fuzzy picture of things moving around. I left it down there with him. I was thinking about bringing it back and trying it on my CRT, so that the CRT I reckon would probably be able to pick up that weak RF signal a bit better than the modern TV does. But it worked, and we could just about get a picture. And to be honest, it was pretty good. Like, messing around with it, playing Pong. Like, it's as you were saying, like, the graphics don't matter. Pong is a classic, and kind of always will be.
I think Pong stands up better now than it did back in whenever it was, because even as a 10-year-old, I had this Pong machine. What it was called tennis.
Yeah, exactly.
There was no AI, computer AI. It was ridiculously monotonous. Boop, boop,
yeah.
boop, boop. There was, the only game you could play on your own was squash practice.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, again, it was amazing to see this, but I can even remember pretty quick getting bored of it. And I think
certainly, like, for me, is like a curiosity from 40 plus years ago.
Yeah,
it's really interesting, and for 10 minutes, I'm entertained. If it's the only system I've got, and I've played those games, and maybe I have, or maybe I haven't got someone to play with, because most of them, really are two player games, because there's no AI. I can see it getting a bit dull, but the one my dad's got is in pretty much pristine condition in its box. As it's got the bill of sale as well, which is why I could say the date when it was bought and that
how much was it? How much was it?
Oh no, I can't. I'm not. Did it have the price on the receipt? Can't remember. It may have been a gift receipt, because it was a gift from his, aunt something or other. So. Yeah, no, I can't remember the price, but it's as an artifact today. It's and as you're saying, almost like from a history perspective, those systems were a significant part of the history of video gaming, right?
Yeah.
That really brought those games home for people to play at an accessible price point.
Well, that's the thing. I says, what before that came along, TV was just about staring at the screen and just watching it. There was no interaction, and suddenly you had this thing that you could turn a dial and it moved something on the TV, and that was amazing that you could actually influence what happened in the TV. Of course,
I had the same experience when I got my Mega Drive. It was I had little to no, other than like putting teletext on and being able to navigate pages on there that interacting with the television. I had very little exposure to that. So I completely understand that, your mind being blown of going, oh wow, you can actually do something on this television.
Yeah. And then of course the big game changer for everybody my age was when a home computer came along. So you went from Pong to suddenly having, these arcade games on your TV. The funny thing was, and this is, I know, but we want to talk about how my experiences are different for yours. I mean, to let you understand, I always remember the day I got my Commodore 64. Now, people always talk about, what was your best video game Christmas? I said, I didn't have any. I says, because I bought all my computer-related stuff I bought. I never got anything for Christmas, so I don't have any Christmas-related stories.
Yeah, so that experience is completely different to me. So, as a child and not really having any money, the only time I'd be able to get something, was a birthday or Christmas. My birthday's in April, so it's 4 months after Christmas. And there were a small handful of occasions where, my parents were, pleased of the, what I'd done at school or something like that. And I might have got a gift of a game. I remember getting Jurassic Park on the Mega Drive as a gift because of whether it was, school report or whatever that was, that as some form of encouragement to do well at school. I mean, obviously work, because I'm a scientist now, and education was a big piece of that. And so getting games at Christmas, I guess until I was a early teenager, was a big part of my kind of growing up.
So did you get the Mega Drive for Christmas or birthday?
It was a Christmas. Yeah, it
And
was
did
definitely.
you know you were getting it? Did you ask for it?
No,
Or
no,
just
didn't ask
know?
for it. I didn't even know it existed. Right.
Wow.
I guess maybe I could have looked in something like the Argos catalog and seen it, but I would have been 6 or 7. So most of the things I got were really gifted to me, or your parents go spot something and go, yeah, maybe that's interesting. Let's just get it and see if Lewis likes it. That sort of thing. And
So
I was
when you opened it up, were you super excited, or did you really not know what it was?
I didn't know what it was, to be honest. I mean, the memories are obviously hazy, being a small child, but I'm pretty sure I did know what it was. And it wasn't until my dad hooked it up and I remember playing it that that's when it was like, oh wow, this is different to anything I've experienced previously.
It's hard to actually fathom how that would have been to go from like just suddenly you're playing this thing in the TV, whereas I had my experience was gradual. I went from like nothing to like Pong to Spectrum, whatever it was. I think it was probably a better experience for me because I had the excitement of seeing things evolve. But
Yeah.
so were you not even aware of video games? Like, I mean, you were 6 years old. I don't suppose you were. You're more interested in
No,
getting
and then
sweets
that's
and
why.
a comic, weren't you?
Yeah, I don't think they were advertised heavily. It was, or like the places they were advertised weren't necessarily places I was looking. I wasn't reading newspapers and things like that. I guess probably a lot of the television I was watching was probably BBC, where there wasn't adverts. Maybe there was some ITV, and I might have occasionally seen an advert for a video game, but it wasn't really on my radar in the way that video games are everywhere now, right? If there's adverts on this video, chances are there's probably a video game being advertised.
Well, yeah, I mean, I went into my local Sainsbury's, and as soon as I walked in, all you've got is this massive thing selling FIFA
Yeah,
2021. It's like
exactly. They just move it to the
brick
front
milk
store. It's
FIFA.
right in your face. I was in
Yeah, yeah.
Sports Direct, a clothes and sort of sports equipment store, and they've got right at the front of the store, stack of video games.
Hmm.
It's just an extra thing just to grab people's attention. So you kind of can't avoid them to a certain extent now.
Mm. Yeah, yeah. I'm looking at that thing behind you. You're obviously good at columns and Tetris because, and that my health and safety radar's flagging big style with that. You've got all these boxes balanced behind you precariously.
Yeah. From my head, there's kind of a
That's
big chest of drawers. There's a stack of PlayStation 2s. There's which side am I? This side. There we go. Yeah, that's like one of those IKEA units with some games, some books in there.
I'm just waiting for that Fitbit box to come down the top of your head. I think it's a Fitbit. Is it not a Fitbit box?
That's actually a gear shifter for my racing simulator. So I've got
Right.
I've got it's literally right here, seat and pedals and steering wheel. And actually, that's the main reason I've got an Xbox One. So things like when you're really trying to play a simulation and not just a game, that's where you really want it to be as close to reality as possible, right? You want the graphics to be great. With racing games, I want it to be like a car. I want it, on a track, I want it to be difficult. I want it to, spin when I lose control and all that sort of stuff. So that's most of the time I use the current gen system. And I think you've made comments before as well about things like FIFA, that they're simulations now. It's a simulation of football. And so if you want to treat it as a simulation, great, go and get a modern system and a modern game. If you want to play a game and it be more like an arcade game, play a classic one, because it's you couldn't run a simulation in even like 2000. So you had things like Virtua Striker from Sega and things like that, and FIFA was not really what it is today.
Yeah, I mean, computer games are completely different now, and that's why I've got all the old systems, but I've got the new systems. I mean, to play 99%, maybe I'm generalizing here, but 99% of like modern games to me, there's no originality, there's no real creativity. Yeah, the graphics, the game worlds that you're in are just incredible. And sometimes when you're playing these games, I mean, what was the last game I bought, and I've played it for 20 minutes, Last of Us 2.
Yeah.
You're running, you're doing the sprint, and you're running past, and you're thinking, there's probably guys that have spent hours working on all these models, and you're just running past.
I think some of these games
really
you have to treat differently, right? You know, I think you've had conversations, particularly, I think, remember with Panther, that they're more like interactive films. You know, I've recently, in terms of, you know, like current gen and last gen, was playing Heavy Rain. I don't know if you're familiar with that game.
I've played him. I've never actually completed it, and I quite fancy getting back into it again. Is it worth? Have you completed it?
No, I've only played a few hours. I started playing it with my wife. Actually, it's only a single player game, but because it's like it has this interactive film element, we could kind of play it together. And for anyone who's played that game, you know, at the beginning, you know, it's quite a dark story, right? And the child gets run over, and my wife's like, you know, we got two small. It happens.
It's
like
a spoiler at the very beginning, anyway.
Yeah, and also for a game that's been out for how many years now? I'm not. It's like when people give, you know, spoilers away on Game of Thrones or whatever, or Breaking Bad. You know, if you've not seen it, you know, it's kind of your fault, and you know, you shouldn't be.
You're not going to see it now, yeah.
but yeah, as soon as she saw that, she's like, no, I can't handle this. So I played it a bit more, and it's you know, interesting, you know, and it's an experience you couldn't really have back on the 8-bits, right, or even the 16-bits. It's close to lifelike graphics. In some ways you're only vaguely interacting with it. It's kind of happening around you. It's got these quick time events that you don't have to. You could, you know, if you do them or not, the story still continues. And there's no like game over, restart. You know, start from the beginning of the level again. It's
a video game. A real video game to me is one where you're constantly moving. You're trying to avoid getting hit. It comes back to the sort of shoot 'em up that I enjoy. And going back to what I was saying, I mean, most of the kind of modern games now, they're just the same. Collect ammo, pick up that, you know, get to the end of the level.
Are like that. I think there are interesting and different games out there.
I think the indie scene has got a lot on Steam. There's some really cracking, some amazing games on Steam.
I would say, from my point of view, I think every system has, you know, gems worth playing. You know, even like, you know, you obviously filter a lot the like C64. There's a lot of bad C64 games, right?
Oh, yeah.
And the ones you play and the ones you remember are really the cream of the library that was available. And so, you know, when you reflect in, say, 5-10 years' time with the Xbox One, for example, which I've got, you go, oh yeah, actually, that was an interesting and different game. They were trying something new, or, you know, a new way of interacting with it, or doing a twist on the current genre. So I think modern games, you know, if you're looking for something different, there is opportunity, but at the same time, it doesn't really excite me. You know, graphics is you know, other than like, you know, those first exposure to sort of going to 3D and going, wow, like look at that. You know, whether it's kind of photorealistic or just, you know, 3D a bit pixelated, for me personally, it doesn't bother me that much. I know people like get put off by early PlayStation, or, you know, I can talk about my kind of N64 experience soon. Those graphics don't bother me. You know, if I play them today, I don't go, oh yeah, this looks shit. Like in the same way, I guess you play 8-bit games and don't go, oh yeah, look, you know, look at the resolution on that. You know, compare, you know, look at the lack of colors. You know, on a spectrum, right? You've got a small color palette, or a small number of colors that can be displayed at any one time. But what you're looking for is that the game being interesting, there being aspects of nostalgia as well, which is always adds to the experience, I think.
Yeah, of course. So when you got your Mega Drive, at what point? I mean, a lot of my mates, you know, because we were that age, I think most people got into video games. Most people had a Spectrum or Commodore 64, and then a lot of these people, you know, they start going to the pub, they start playing football, whatever, and they lose interest. Whereas myself, and well, probably out of all when I say my mates, I mean, you know, I've got all my YouTube mates, yourself included, but like real life people who I grew up out with YouTube.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
think
sure.
there's a few that are still into their video games. There's a few that I've kind of got in touch with over the last 5-6 years through a computer club, but most of them have kind of moved away from video games. Whereas I've still, you know, it's never left me, and I'm 52. 53 in Friday in 4 days' time. Note that in your calendar. And I know for a fact it sounds ridiculous. It sounds preposterous to think that you would if somebody said to you, "Do you want to watch a 70-year-old man or a 60-year-old man talking about video games?" That just sounds ridiculous. But in 7 years' time, I'm going to be 60.
Yeah.
And I'm hopefully all going well, touch wood. I'll still be making YouTube content, and will people be watching me? Probably will, because I think age is just a number.
Yeah, exactly.
But it's never left me. So what's interesting in yourself is obviously you started off a Mega Drive, and what was your timeline in machines?
Yeah. So from the Mega Drive, N64 was the next console I had, and you know, I've got a very vivid memory of going to Toys R Us and them having a demo console set up and playing Mario 64 for the first time. I didn't have a PlayStation or a Saturn up until that point, and so seeing this kind of 3D world having analog controls, my mind was just blown. That was
a game changer, definitely.
Yeah, that was for me. That was absolutely huge. I was only, I guess, then the N64 came out in like '96. I didn't get one straight away, but I would have gone to Toys R Us and would have seen it. And my cousin had one. He tended to get things as they came out. He still lived in Brighton. That was where my grandparents from. It was on my mum's side, and so I had a little bit of exposure to it there. And when I saw that for the first time, I was like, yeah, I've got to get one of these. And then I think it was the next year they reduced the price from like probably something like $299 to like $150 or something. It was something around that. And so when that price came down, that was kind of the price point that was sort of affordable to my parents. So got the N64 then. It was kind of just before things like GoldenEye came out. So GoldenEye came out just before Christmas that year. Mm-hmm. So I got Mario 64 was the game that came with the console. I got Mario Kart 64 not long after, and then kind of had to wait for Christmas to come, and then that was possibly I had two games. That was maybe the same year Legend of Zelda came out, Ocarina of Time. I can't remember exactly. It might have been the same year. But yeah, GoldenEye and Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time were two big games that influenced me heavily.
Did you ever own Turok Dinosaur Hunter?
That reminds me of another. So again, N64 games when they came out were really expensive. Turok when it came out was like 70 quid.
I can't remember.
And it was, and even the normal games were 60, and then the price point started to shift to sort of 50 to 40. But when the N64 came out, the games were really expensive, and so to kind of play more games, there was a local video store, and I used to go and rent them, and you could do like an overnight rental for like 2 or 3 quid. And so I'd go, with my mum, first thing on a Saturday, rent this game.
Maximize the time.
Yeah, exactly. Rent the game basically as soon as they opened, play it all day Saturday, play it most of Sunday, and then return it like Sunday just before they shut. So many weekends, were taken up playing N64 games that I'd rented. And yeah, a number of games that I played and completed even in a weekend.
When you think about it, that is actively encouraging laziness, because if you're renting a game overnight, you're obviously going to sit in and do nothing else apart from play the game.
I would literally sit for on a weekend or in the holidays, play almost all day. Like you were doing your 12-hour live stream, easy. Want to play Zelda Ocarina of Time for 12 hours? Yeah, stick it on in the morning, play it all day. turn it off when you go to bed. You know, I must have completed that game in not very long at all, because it was, you know, it was Christmas and the, you know, it was off, so, you know, had full days to play. But, you know, as a, I don't know, 12 or 13-year-old, and had friends who were doing the same thing.
This was before you get these little warnings. Please take a 15-minute break for every hour of gameplay. Bollocks to that, eh? 20 hours straight through.
And like, also, I remember, like, on the Mega Drive, it was kind of before any of the like age ratings and things. I remember getting Splatterhouse 2, which I guess is one of the early or first horror games. But I would have been, I don't know, 8, 9, 10 years old, and you're baseball batting these, you know, things into the wall, and the, you know, blood and things going everywhere. Or play like Mortal Kombat, Mortal Kombat on the Mega Drive as well. Remember playing that. I don't think I owned it. I think, again, I must have either rented it or borrowing it. I guess another big thing was trading games with friends. Like, you know, okay, you've got this, I've got this. We'll swap that for a week, and then we'll swap back.
Yeah, just mentioning Mortal Kombat. Have you played any of the sort of the recent versions that have been out in the last couple of years?
Latest I played was probably Mortal Kombat like 4, I guess, when it went to a little bit 3D.
3D. You should have a watch on YouTube. Like the fatalities. I don't know what it's up to now. Is it 11? I think it is.
Yeah, something like that.
It's just ridiculous. It's insane. It's actually quite interesting. I mean, my daughter, oddly enough, bought Mortal Kombat 10 for the PlayStation 4. I mean, I'm just a button masher. I would never be able to pull off a death move, but it's just ridiculous. But that is the difference between an old game and a modern game for me. Is people want they want to be they want to have all these graphical showpieces. You know, they want to be rewarded with this amazing cutscene of somebody pulling their spine out or whatever. Whereas you look at a game in Atari 2600, it was all up there. You know, you just imagined it.
I mean, I see things like the box art, right? You know, you've got this elaborate image on the front, and the game is literally just like a series of squares moving around the screen.
That's exactly it. And there was I've mentioned this before. There's a guy, Stuart Campbell, called the Reverend. He's actually born and bred about 5 minutes from where I live. He's a sort of a political activist, a very clever guy. He was probably my favourite ever video games journalist. He used to write for, is it Your Spectrum, I think it was, and then he went to work for what do you call it? I think he worked for Computer and Video Games. No, it was Amiga Power, and he was a fantastic journalist. And he used to have his own website, and he did a video. It wasn't a video, or was it a video? I can't remember. But he did a piece, and he basically was at Sonic Adventure. I think it was Sonic Adventure on the Xbox, and he basically sellotaped the analog controller in up position, and he just kept going like that, and he said he got like to the 4th or 5th level just with pressing the button, constantly jumping, jump.
Yeah.
And that is the difference between games now. You know, when you actually, if you strip back the latest Call of Duty or whatever it is, I don't even know, Call of Duty, Black Ops, and all these kind of things, you're effectively just running. It's really no different. When you think about it, it's really no different from Pac-Man. Instead of Pac-Man, you move up, down, left, and right. It's still the same movement, up, down, left, and right. The only difference is, as you move up, the screen comes towards you, you turn left and right, whatever. You pick up bullets, you shoot him, you collect a key, you move to another bit, and it's just completely passive now. And I hate to say this, but I don't think there's any real skill involved in playing games nowadays. It's about having patience. Oh, you get to the end of level boss, you shoot.
Depends what you're doing, I think. I mean, Pac-Man is a good game, and you know, things that evolve from it, you know, that have that concept, the same sort of concept, are going to be good too, right? I think now there's the split or more to move online and playing with other people, right? And that's where
that is challenging. There's that aspect, which is
so like Call of Duty. Yeah, it has the story mode, and like we're talking about being in a film, the story modes of Call of Duty games, or like the ones I remember, like Call of Duty 3 and things like that, are actually quite enjoyable because you're interacting with this film, and there's explosions and stuff happening around you and little cutscenes. The gameplay is okay, it's fine, but you're really trying to absorb the story. And I think that storytelling is something which kind of wasn't necessarily possible back in the day. And then for like the real challenging stuff and the reflexes and the stuff like a shoot 'em up where you're really on the edge and nearly getting blown up. That's where the online play, I think, has gone, right. Your reflexes are compared to someone else's reflexes, and who's going to shoot the other person first. So I played a lot of like Team Fortress 2, I guess when I was at university. And so I guess I was around for the beginning of kind of online gaming, I guess, like Counter-Strike and things like that, when I still had a 56k dial-up modem. That's another piece of kind of gaming history that is within this sort of timeline, I guess, that we can talk about. But I'm conscious of time. We're kind of approaching 11 o'clock. Maybe this is sort of the early years. Maybe we should do a follow-up of the teenage years.
I think what we'll do, Lewis, is we'll reconvene. We'll definitely have a part 2 of this. I think so, because there's so much more to talk about. I mean, where do you end? You know what I mean?
I think it's really interesting, from because so much of history is people's experiences, right? And what we're hearing is, your experiences compared to my experiences, and just how they were different, just purely because of different points in time.
No, definitely. Listen, I'll let you get away then, Lewis. Thank you very, very much for joining me. We will definitely get together for a part 2. Let me know. Put your comments down below, guys, what you think of this. If there's any questions you want Lewis, or not so much questions for us to answer, but if there's any topics relating to kind of video gaming to young guys versus old bloke like myself. So finally, thanks, Lewis, for joining me. And as always, guys, thank you very, very much for watching.
Yeah, thanks, everyone. See ya.
Cheers, man.